It's official. Donald Trump is the third president in American history to be impeached by the House of Representatives, joining Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton. Now, Richard Nixon, remember, he resigned before the House voted on the articles of impeachment. But this is the middle, not the end, of the impeachment process. This basically means that Trump is officially charged with the abuses of power laid out in the House's articles of impeachment. But now the process moves on to the Senate, where Trump will actually be tried. If 2/3 of the Senate vote for conviction, he'll be removed from office. But Donald Trump is not going to be removed from office by the Senate. Mitch McConnell is the majority leader there, and he more than anyone else will control that process. And on December 12th, he went on Fox News to assure Sean Hannity that he saw his role not as conducting a fair trial, but as protecting Trump's presidency, as carrying out Donald Trump's will.
Everything I do during this, I'm coordinating with White House counsel. There will be no difference between the president's position and our position as to how to handle this.
The famous line about the Nixon impeachment was that it came down to what did the president know and when did he know it. But that's not the case with Donald Trump's impeachment. We know what the president knew. He knew from the beginning because he released a call record in which he personally asked Ukraine's president to investigate Hunter and Joe Biden in return for the military aid promised to Ukraine. And a slew of witnesses testifying before Congress have backed that up.
What did Ambassador Sondland say to tell you that he told Mr. Yermak?
That the Ukrainians would have to have the prosecutor general make a statement with respect to the investigations as a condition of having the aid lifted.
No, the question here is, what will congressional Republicans accept, and what will they even defend? The facts of the case here are very simple. I spoke recently with Harvard Law professor Noah Feldman. He was one of the 4 constitutional scholars invited to testify before the House Judiciary Committee as part of their hearings. And the striking fact about this impeachment process, he said to me, is that it's not an edge case. It's not a complex question of constitutional interpretation.
The framers had this one conversation on July 20th, 1787, where they laid out in really clear terms what they were worried about. They were worried about the abuse of power by a president for his personal gain, to corrupt the electoral process, and to subvert national security. That's why they put impeachment in there.
The first article of impeachment lays this out very clearly. It reads, using the powers of his high office, President Trump solicited the interference of a foreign government, Ukraine, in the 2020 presidential election. He did so through a scheme or course of conduct that included soliciting the government of Ukraine to publicly announce investigations that would benefit his re-election, harm the election prospects of a political opponent, and influence a 2020 United States presidential election to his advantage. That Donald Trump did this is not in doubt, and he did it by leveraging aid that Ukraine, an ally, needed to protect itself against Russian invasion.
And this was just one of those cases where it's just not that complicated.
Because Republicans can argue that Trump is innocent of what he's alleged to have done, innocent of what his own call record shows him doing, some Republicans have embraced an argument that is actually a lot scarier, that's much more dangerous to our system of government, much more in violation of what the founders wanted, that what Trump did is fine.
This president did nothing wrong.
The President of the United States and Mr. Zelensky both said nothing was wrong, and Mr. Zelensky has said many times over, we felt no pressure.
And I have news for everybody. Get over it. There's going to be political influence in foreign policy.
The problem here isn't just a 2020 election, it's a precedent it sets for every other election. Congress is meant to use the impeachment power to set boundaries on executive behavior. If Republicans erase this one, then as Feldman says,
they're saying to Donald Trump, go ahead and do it in the future, and that's bad enough. But they're also saying it to every future president. Go ahead and use the office of the presidency to gain personal political advantage in upcoming elections.
That is not, to be fair, Republicans' only argument. Some Republicans have focused on process, that the House impeachment process was too fast, that it didn't call all the witnesses.
The fact that my colleague is already desperate to sign up the Senate for new fact-finding, which House Democrats themselves were too impatient to see through.
The circularity of this argument is a bit maddening. House Democrats wanted to call more witnesses, they wanted to subpoena more documents, and Trump blocked them, claiming executive privilege. That's why Article 2 of the 2 articles of impeachment is obstruction of Congress. Specifically, the article says Trump obstructed Congress in doing its constitutional duty by 1. Directing the White House to defy subpoenas to produce documents relevant to the investigation. 2. Directing agencies to defy subpoenas, such that the Department of Energy, The Department of Management and Budget, the State Department, and the Department of Defense refused to produce a single document or record for this investigation, and directing 9 key administration officials to refuse to testify. Look, Republicans who actually cared about Congress and the Constitution and their duty to conduct oversight, and who truly were undecided on the facts of the case, who really felt they just didn't know what happened between Donald Trump and Ukraine, they could threaten Donald Trump. They can make him produce these documents, make him produce these witnesses by saying they'd vote for the obstruction of Congress article if he refused to honor the subpoenas and send the witnesses. They could just demand the House is able to complete its investigation to their satisfaction. That no congressional Republicans hold this position makes their true position all too clear.
This thing will come to the Senate, and it will die quickly, and I will do everything I can to make it die quickly.
This isn't how the system the founders constructed is meant to work. Ambition was supposed to check ambition. Instead, the ambition of congressional Republicans has become an enabler for the ambitions of President Donald Trump. There's a particular line on page 5 of the Articles of Impeachment that I keep thinking about. It is, in my view, the most important line in the entire document. It reads, "President Trump, by such conduct, has demonstrated that he will remain a threat to national security and the Constitution if allowed to remain in office." Everything Trump did with Ukraine came after the Mueller investigation, after his presidency was put at risk over allegations of collusion with a foreign power in 2016. And then, after all of that, Donald Trump having escaped that inquiry unscathed, he turned around and tried to enlist Ukraine's help in the next election. If congressional Republicans let him off the hook for this, why does anyone think he won't do it again and again and again? And why then don't they think this will just become a normal tactic for incumbent presidents worried about their own re-election? This is, of course, the exact scenario the founders most feared. Republicans are abandoning their constitutional role to provide oversight and to curb the executive's abuse of power. Every Senate Republican I interview tell me they see themselves as a constitutional conservative, that their goal in Congress is to protect the Constitution. But that's not what they have become. They've become anti-constitutional Trumpists. They are putting our system of government at risk. One more thing before you go. If you want to hear the full interview with Noah Feldman and quite a bit more like that, you can subscribe to my podcast, Impeachment Explained. We release every week. We have a lot more where that came from, and we will put a link in the description.